This subject has been taking a lot of the nation's energy. It's an event in a church, a judgmental act by a person manipulated by strong psychotropic drugs, and a situation which involves more than just a single act. It involves more than just Trayvon Martin and attempts on George Zimmerman's life, which was cited by the killer Darren Roof, 21-year-old Carolinian, who was concerned about types of things happening here that have happened in South Africa and Rhodesia and indeed in the South, whom he identifies with. They are events that were triggered by history, a history which we now as a nation, many parts of the nation, are attempting to ignore and indeed to banish in the ultimate act of denial. This denial now includes many Republican politicians. Just as these political Republicans abandoned our efforts and sacrifice in Iraq in 2003 at the sight of reporters asking them questions. Now they are clamoring to banish the South, believing that this will not only help them in their short-term political ambitions, but also well, actually, I don't actually know what else they think it will do. Perhaps they think it will take away this history of the United States, perhaps deny our existence, led by one Harvard attendee, Barack Obama, trained by lawyers to attack and to deny, to attack the United States and to deny its essential goodness, because he condemns based on race, not based on slavery, based on race. He does not condemn the Muslim slavery that's ongoing even today, or the African slavery, which is still going on. Instead, he wants to condemn America, and he's using this as a stepping stone to attack the South in general. Not just slavery, but the South. And many have observed that this is just a stepping stone to attack the American flag. It's been observed by Rush Limbaugh and myself, but it has also been urged by Louis Farrakhan, along with the Judgment Day for whites, along with we're going to kill all of you. These kinds of things is what Obama is stirring up. And many observers are thinking, what can we do? How can we keep some sanity? Just because Obama got thumped in 2 national elections, left his party in shambles, and the American people dismayed at the ineffectiveness of either party to grapple with any of the issues facing America. They just decided to outsource millions more jobs to Asia by backing this opportunist in the Trans-Pacific Partnership fast track, basically throwing to his politicized and radical team and supporters the future of the United States economy and our society. And so a lot of people will say, well, I don't need to pay attention to this. These are a bunch of extremists. I'm busy. I have my own concerns. I don't care about America. And they'll say, these things are not really happening. They're not of a concern to me. But the tragedy of this is that the radical centrist debate, discussion, American discussion of what we really stand for, not entitlements that we're handing out to foreigners, and those who will kill Christianity, and even better than secularists who just hate it. For these people are enemies sworn to kill Christianity. They're being backed by Democrats and great leaders in this country. And so what is that conversation we need to have? Somebody says, let's have a conversation about Lake Calhoun, like that has something to do with Minnesota, who fought in the Civil War to end slavery. It's not necessary now to have just had slaves, have defended slavery, have fought for slavery. No, now it's all Americans. And Sharon Sun said today, and I saw it, I haven't replied yet, but this is a reply. She says, let's have that conversation. Let's have a conversation about Lake Calhoun and how Minnesota is racist, because they have Lake Calhoun, and we think that Calhoun is John C. Calhoun. Now, how that could ever have been John C. Calhoun, I don't know. But this is just an example of extending this big assault to Minnesota, who sent regiments to fight and die in a civil war. These people, like Sharon Sund, they have not done this. These people that come in from Chicago, they have not done this, but Minnesotans did. Minnesotans played an important role in the Battle of Gettysburg, I believe, and saving the Union. And a lot of that was what this was about. the Union was fractured by this abhorrent institution of slavery, which we abhorred not because we thought just that black people should not be subject to it, but human beings shouldn't be subject to it. Somehow out of Africa it came to us and it evolved, as they say, to this kind of abhorrent institution, which eventually led to the inability of the Union itself to hold. And so we need to have this discussion. So the first observation is that this Calhoun question shows that what is really this is just about is black politicians, activists, Democrats getting into the debate in order to spread to Minnesota. And this is the kind of thing that's happened, because I've been honest in these debates. I don't see anybody else except people who are called right-wing or bloggers who has paid attention to the fact that the evidence of court in the case of Michael Brown, as well as autopsies, as well as ballistics and forensics, these show that Michael Brown, after a strong-armed robbery, reached in the car, slammed the door on a cop, reached for his gun and tried to kill him. And somehow he's a hero to Barack Obama. And he's a hero to these people in Carolina. I don't believe that Michael Brown was a hero to Clementa Pinckney. I don't believe they're anything like the same. One is a good man doing what he needs to do, what he thinks is right, what he thinks God's called him to do, what he thinks God calls him to do. Now another is a lost soul. And somehow Barack Obama, Eric Holder, Loretta Lynch, and Hillary Clinton believe that he somehow epitomizes the essence of blackness, the essence of black America today. Well, opportunities were there for Michael Brown. He could go to the school where he was going to learn air conditioning, learn a trade, and be able to make a decent living, would be able to actually help his people, because no doubt many people in the black community would have bought air conditioning services, and Michael Brown would have been gainfully employed. Instead, he chose a gangster's lifestyle, and one that is in fact being promoted, not only by Barack Obama, but also other critical players now, like Farrakhan, like organizations which glorify Muslim attacks and beheadings in America, by Americans, and by Americans. So essentially, these people are guilty of treason. But that is not the whole conversation we need to have. These are inconvenient facts, inconvenient truths, but the discussion we need is that raised by Byron Stevenson in an interview. Byron Stevenson is like Obama, another Harvard graduate, law school graduate, obviously an intelligent man, and he presents many facts which have really been omitted from the big national debate. One of the facts that struck me that he brought in was that in many states in the South that there are celebrations on the day of MLK's birthday. They also celebrate Robert E. Lee. Now, I don't know why. I don't know why is the birthday on the same day, but there is a kind of a jangling, a grating cognitive dissonance when you put throughout the South these two figures, Martin Luther King and Robert E. Lee. MLK is a national holiday, and I don't know if they've countered in some states by adding Robert E. Lee to the days, but it's very similar to the comparison or proximity of the Confederate battle flag that motivated drug-crazed, young, misguided youth. We don't know how he got there. And that flag juxtaposed against the message of Christianity, the saving message of Jesus Christ that is expounded and embraced by Clementa Pinckney, Reverend Clementa Pinckney, Senator Clementa Pinckney, who had somehow got involved in another of this series of high-profile cases, this one involving someone in North Charleston. That's Walter Scott, another man who was caught up. This man was actually someone who was caught up, who had married, who had obligations of child support. And there's a big national apparatus system that uses the police all over this country to track down these black men and white men. All kinds of men are tracked down by the police, by the women who want that child support. In most cases, this is being paid by the government already, because women generally are, especially with children, able to get generous pretty generous coverage, donations, charity, government benefits from the state. And then apparently the state thinks, well, we're going to then turn around and collect it. They create this bureaucracy, and that bureaucracy was going to put Walter Scott in jail because he owed $17,000 child support. And so he ran. Nobody understood why he ran because he did have some other kinds of assaults. They didn't know if it was a serious violent crime he was running from or whether it was the fact that he was going to be in prison once again because he owed child support, had been in jail once before and was going back and decided to make a run for it. And he was tackled by the police officer who chased him down. During a confrontation, he grabbed the taser of this man, this police officer, and it appears that the police officer did not after that let him go because he felt that was a violent crime. Decided to keep him there, not to allow him to escape, but began to shoot him in the backside, in the buttocks, and then some shots out of 8 because he was running away in violation of the law, found the mark to kill this man, Walter Scott, tragically. And the full story of Walter Scott should be understood, should be told. But somehow Clementa Pinckney got caught up in this because he was a senator. And he was the one that carried bills to have police body cameras. And he's also the one who called for forgiveness and moving forward. And that's the voice that we should hear. This is the voice that we should hear, not the voices that say forgiveness is wrong. We need to finish the slave uprising of 1818 of Denmark Vesey, who founded that Charleston black church. And it was burned down because of this slave uprising. And he was then hanged because he was going to kill every white person he saw in the street. And you know, one can sympathize with that because of the evils of slavery. And it's understandable. I know African people, and I know they are worthy of respect. They believe their ideas are just as good as Europeans. And we need to dialogue and create a bond, not the bondage of slavery. That is just evil. But what is not understandable is that today, the former new Black Panther leader is speaking to hundreds of enthusiastic supporters to carry that out, a threat of further violence in South Carolina. This is not what Clementa Pinckney would have wanted. Now there's more. If you look at what Stevenson says, Byron Stevenson, he brings in a lot more facts than just the odd grading juxtaposition of Robert E. Lee and Martin Luther King, which seems, I think, to disrespect the role that we all see MLK as play. Surely this man, not in a slave uprising, not with violence, a man who was at least aware of Gandhi and a follower of Jesus Christ, and a believer that there would come a day when we would sit together, and because of the content of our character, because the content of our character would be good. If he just said that we would be judged on the content of our character, and perhaps that is in a twisted way the kind of judgment that motivated Darren Roof. He judged that these martyrs were associated with a hope to rise to power and to be able to contribute to the healing of the nation, and he judged that they had failed, that had resulted in raping our women. I believe in his website he was talking about the attempted killing of George Zimmerman, what he called the media blowing up the side of Trayvon Martin. I seriously doubt that he even knew that, yes, Trayvon Martin had attempted, by a witness on a phone, had jumped George Zimmerman, had slammed him to the ground, was on top of him, was bigger than him, and tried to kill him, and that it was self-defense. I'm not even sure he knew all those details, but he did make this judgment. He was motivated by this failure of what he thought was a failure of the hope of freedom. And we know that this hope of freedom is brought out by our Constitution and our Holy Bible, and also the Torah, and others who have a vision of freedom that is theirs by their Creator, or theirs for some other reason. And this is the judgment that came across. But I believe that MLK did not just want people to be judged by the content of their character, but they would have some character in their content, that they would contribute and be a citizen of this country, which binds all of us together. You know, Mr. Stevenson will point out all the failures of the whites in his description of the Civil War and of the aftermath of slavery as it rose up in this country in its mighty and awful presence, even though it was largely scattered throughout private farms, throughout the South where labor was highly valued. And unfortunately, there was a fit between this African labor, where labor was highly valued, and that was brought by the slave trade, and the needs of farmers in those times and before mechanization and automation of the farms. And it's really a very bad thing, the central role that slavery came to play. And in its early stages, it involved white slaves as well, who were indentured workers, servants, bonded. And indeed, there was much slavery throughout the world, and the Muslims today, who many of the black activists seek to join with, they were the kings of slavery. They even today say that slavery has a basis in their religion, that it's a good thing, and it's justified. It's very similar to many people who are viewed as rejecting their religion and their dignity and their humanity as infidels who must be killed. Others would be enslaved. And today, ironically, we have black people who want to join with them to attack America. Why? Because of its whiteness, because there is whiteness in America. And out of their hatred for race, which is spurred by this terrible sacrifice of these black Christians, things they cannot now comprehend. And we hope that Clementa Pinckney will call out and be heard by them, not Shabazz. And ironically, those who have not heard it want to join with these very people who are the masters of slavery. And it shows that many other people have not internalized or understood the values of freedom and liberty. They themselves have adopted a view of themselves as bound by their race, bound by history, bound by the win-lose transactions that they have to live through every day, bound by poverty, bound by perhaps self-loathing, and they want to get free of that by attacking their oppression. Now on the other side, there's no doubt that the Southern whites have been victimized by that same history and by the institution of slavery. It no longer worked for them. And they also, there's no doubt, they wanted to transition at the time of the Civil War to industrialization, as the North was. They wanted to trade, and they were not bound only to slave-based agriculture. And that failed, and resulted in a massive and destructive Civil War. And the tragedy today is that the Democrats, who are the authors of slavery, the authors of Jim Crow, and the authors of the KKK, the Democrats want to resurrect that Civil War for use in a short-term political game, trying to win the White House, trying to win seats in the U.S. Senate and the U.S. House of Representatives, contests in which I have been engaged as an independent candidate and the nominee of the Independence Party for Senate against Al Franken in 2014, and for the House of Representatives in the 4th District, capital of Minnesota, in 2010 and 2012. And we must not allow them to do that. We must not allow cynical opportunism to destroy and put our country, the stability of this country, at risk. The military, as well as our great institutions. Our education is at risk today, our economy, marriage and the family, human life itself, through the abhorrent institution of abortion. These are the things we need to grapple with. Solving these things, not attacking the police, not taking guns away, and attacking the South and trying to erase our history. Because slavery is more connected with the American flag than just the Confederate emblems during the Secession and Civil War. We need to address this together. And we cannot have politicians who cynically manipulate and even create tragedies which take the lives of innocent people, we as well as the not so innocent. We must provide another way forward. We don't want to take America back to the Civil War. We want to take America forward to the America whose destiny we still seek, that destiny that was sought by Pinckney and the other 3 pastors who were among the martyrs of the Charleston AME Baptist Church. We need to join with them, not only in condolence, which we do, but we need to truly join together to give the power to our states, like South Carolina, to give the power to the cities, local governments, and not only the governments, but the people. The power to the people does not mean power to the government. It means power to free people who will have the judgment and the experience and the education and the guidance and the leadership to take on each of these issues at the local level. At the local level, not from Washington. We do not need to wait to see what Barack Obama has to say, what Hillary Clinton has to say, even what Rand Paul, Mitt Romney, Mitch McConnell, and John Boehner. We don't need to hear what they have to say. Their job must be to transition the power back to us, so that people like Mike Brown don't need to be thankful for Department of Justice to attack the cops, but that Washington has recognized how America is supposed to work, and that there's a role for him. Maybe just heating and air conditioning maintenance and gainful employment, which is a victory in his life, had he reached out for it. But even more, we don't just need other black and other minorities in the courts trying to pass laws to change the world. Because within the context of our Constitution, those who will educate themselves further and work not only for profit, because yes, profit is necessary and good, it's profitable, it profits a man, but not to lose our souls, but to find them and to live as God intended when He helped us to found this great nation. Thank you for listening. God bless America. I'm Steve Carlson, candidate for president in 2016, an independent candidate from Minnesota.